Melbourne's housing crisis has deepened, with rents for units and houses hitting record levels.
More than 1,000 homes have been removed from Melbourne's rental market.
We're likely to continue to see rents rising this year and possibly even into next year.
Here's what the Victorian government doesn't want you to admit. Melbourne's median weekly rent has smashed through $650 per week, and in some inner suburbs, it's now over $900 per week for a basic two-bedroom unit. That's more than $3,300 per month just to keep a roof over your head. While Premier Jacinta Allen announces housing initiatives that experts say won't help for years, Melbourne renters in suburbs from Southbank to Cranbourne are getting absolutely hammered by the worst rental crisis in Victoria's history.
Families in Melbourne's west, northwest and southeast are among the hardest hit by record levels of rental stress.
And here's the brutal truth. Vacancy rates are still under 2%, which means it's only going to get worse. In this video, I'm breaking down the exact numbers by Melbourne suburb, from the CBD to the outer ring, showing you which areas are getting destroyed and why the Premier's solutions are making things worse, not better. Let's get into it. Right, let's start with the data, because the scale of this rental crisis is absolutely cooked. According to the latest data from Real Estate Australia, which tracks hundreds of thousands of rental listings across Australia, Melbourne's median weekly rent hit $650 in early 2025. That's for all property types combined. But here's where it gets really nasty when you break it down by dwelling type. Houses. $720 per week median, up 8.3% year on year. Units. $580 per week median, up 7.4% year on year. But Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, this bloke tracks rental markets more closely than anyone in Australia, says the real problem isn't the median. It's what's happening at the affordable end of the market. Melbourne's vacancy rate sits at just 1.8%. That means for every 100 rental properties in Melbourne, only 1.8 are available to rent at any given time. Anything below 3% is considered a crisis. We're sitting at barely half that. Here's how Melbourne compares to other capitals. Perth, 2.5% vacancy. Tight, but better than Melbourne. Sydney, 1.4% vacancy. Worse than Melbourne. Brisbane, 1.9% vacancy. Similar crisis. Adelaide, 0.7% vacancy. Absolute disaster. So Melbourne isn't alone. But that doesn't make it any less brutal for the people trying to find a place to bloody live. Now let's break this down by actual Melbourne suburbs, because the median doesn't tell the full story. Southbank, right in the heart of Melbourne, is seeing $850 per week for a standard two-bedroom apartment. 5 years ago, you could get the same place for $550 per week. That's a $300 per week increase in half a decade. Carlton, traditionally popular with students and young professionals, is now $700 per week for a basic two-bedroom unit. Students can't afford that. Even young professionals earning $70,000 to $80,000 are getting priced out. Fitzroy, hipster central, is now $750 per week for a two-bedroom terrace. The same properties were $550 per week in 2020. That's a 36% increase in 5 years. Glen Waverley in Melbourne's east, popular with families, is $680 per week for a three-bedroom house. For a family earning the Melbourne median household income of $133,000, that's 27% of gross income just on rent. And that's before tax. Box Hill, with all its high-rise apartments, is $620 per week for a two-bedroom unit. You'd think with all that supply, rents would be lower. Nope. Demand is that insane. Footscray, once one of Melbourne's most affordable suburbs, is now $580 per week for a two-bedroom unit. That's up from $420 per week just 3 years ago, 38% increase in 3 years. These suburbs have seen the fastest rent growth in all of Melbourne. Why? Because people are getting pushed out of inner and middle suburbs and flooding into the outer ring. But even out here, supply can't keep up with demand. So who exactly is getting destroyed by Melbourne's rental surge. Let me paint you a picture of real people in this crisis. Victim number 1, the single professional. Meet Amy. She's 28, works as a nurse at the Royal Melbourne Hospital, earning $75,000 a year. She needs to live close to the city because she works rotating shifts, early mornings, late nights, weekends. She's looking for a one-bedroom apartment in Southbank or Carlton, close to work, close to transport. The cheapest she can find, $650 per week. That's $2,817 per month. Amy's take-home pay after tax on $75,000? About $4,800 per month. So she's spending 58.6% of her take-home income on rent alone. The Australian government says you're in rental stress at 30%. Amy is at nearly double that, with $1,983 remaining after rent. Her monthly living expenses total $1,400. The largest costs are food $600, transport $200, and student loans $200, with utilities, phone, internet, and health insurance adding a combined $400. That leaves her $583 per month for absolutely everything else: clothing, social life, emergencies, savings. She's one car breakdown away from financial disaster. Victim number 2, the young family. Meet James and Sarah, both in their early 30s. James is a teacher earning $85,000. Sarah is a part-time admin worker earning $45,000. Combined income? $130,000, just under Melbourne's median household income. They have 2 kids under 5. They're renting a 3-bedroom house in Glen Waverley because the schools are good, and it's reasonably close to both their workplaces. Their combined take-home pay after tax? About $8,400 per month. Rent takes 35% of that, already over the stress threshold. But wait, it gets worse. After paying rent, they've 4 essential monthly expenses. Childcare is the most significant burden at $2,200, even with subsidies, followed by $1,200 for food and $800 for vehicle costs, which are necessary for living in the outer suburbs. The remaining $850 covers utilities, telecommunications, and children's needs. That's $5,050 in fixed expenses after rent. They have $303 per month left for savings, emergencies, or anything unexpected. They're trapped. Can't save for a house deposit, can't handle a rent increase, can't afford another kid even if they wanted one. Victim number 3, the share house renter. Meet Tom. He's 24, finished uni 2 years ago, works in hospitality, earning $55,000 a year. He's sharing a 3-bedroom house in Footscray with 2 other people. Even splitting rent 3 ways, Tom's paying $837 per month, about 26% of his take-home income. That's manageable, right? Wrong, because he's not just sharing with 2 people anymore. The house was designed for 3. But to afford it, they've converted the dining room into a 4th bedroom and brought in another flatmate. 4 people sharing 1 bathroom, kitchen's always packed, 0 privacy. And this is common across Melbourne. Students and young workers crammed into houses designed for families just to afford the rent. It's not just unaffordable, it's affecting people's mental health and quality of life. So how did Melbourne's rental market turn into this nightmare? It's not one thing, it's 6 major factors colliding all at once. Factor 1, vacancy crisis. Melbourne's vacancy rate collapsed from 4.2% in 2020 to just 1.8% today. That's the tightest rental market Melbourne has seen in 15 years. Why? 3 reasons. International students returned. After COVID, overseas student numbers surged back. Melbourne's universities are packed again. All those students need somewhere to live. Immigration boom. Victoria's immigration intake jumped from 80,000 in 2020 to 160,000 plus in 2024. Every one of those people needs housing. Investor exodus. Landlords sold properties during COVID and haven't come back. Factor 2. Construction collapse. Melbourne completed just 8,400 new rental dwellings in 2024, down 30% from 2019 levels. Meanwhile, Melbourne's population grew by 140,000 people in the same year. Do the math. 8,400 new rentals built, 140,000 population increase. Assume 2.5 people per household equals need 56,000 new dwellings. Shortfall, 47,600 dwellings. That gap? That's why rents are exploding. Factor 3. Investor taxes. The Victorian government has systematically attacked property investors with a tax cocktail designed to raise revenue. The result? 21,700 fewer rental properties in Victoria in the last financial year. Landlords looked at rising taxes, strict tenancy laws, and mediocre returns, and sold up. Those rental properties either became owner-occupied, removing them from rental supply, or were bought by other owner-occupiers. Either way, rental supply shrunk. Factor 4. Airbnb drain.
The rise of short-term rentals like Airbnbs is happening across the globe. The city of Melbourne is one of the hardest hit.
There are an estimated 8,000 plus properties in Melbourne operating as full-time Airbnbs, meaning they're not available for long-term rental. That's 8,000 homes taken off the rental market in suburbs like Fitzroy, St Kilda, Southbank, and the CBD. Why? Because owners can make more money on Airbnb than long-term rentals. Long-term rent in Southbank, $650 per week equals $33,800 per year. Same apartment on Airbnb at $200 per night with 70% occupancy equals $51,100 per year. The math is simple, but it's destroying long-term rental supply. Factor 5. Wage stagnation versus rent explosion. Melbourne wages have grown 14% in the last 5 years. Melbourne rents have grown 38% in the same period. Rents are growing 2.7 times faster than wages. What that means in real terms, if you were spending 30% of your income on rent in 2020, you're now spending 40% of your income on rent for the same property. Your income hasn't kept up. Factor 6. The mortgage cliff ripple effect. Remember those 520,000 Victorian households in mortgage stress we covered in the previous video? A lot of them are former landlords. When their fixed rates expired and repayments doubled, many landlords sold their investment properties to reduce debt. Every property sold is one less rental available. This compounds the shortage. So what's the Victorian government doing about this rental crisis? Premier Jacinta Allen announced a plan to build 80,000 new homes per year by 2030. Sounds great, right? Here's the problem. Industry bodies say it's impossible without major planning reform. Current approvals take 18 to 24 months. Reversing investor taxes to bring private capital back. Infrastructure investment. New suburbs need roads, schools, transport. Construction workforce expansion. We don't have enough tradies. While the target is set at 80,000 new total dwellings annually, only 8,400 rentals were actually completed in 2024. This is a gap of 70,600 dwellings, which means the government has to 10 times the construction output to meet this criteria. That's not a plan, that's a fantasy. What would actually help? Reverse anti-investor taxes, bring back landlords, fast-track planning approvals, cut red tape from 18 months to 6 months, ban full-time Airbnbs, return 8,000 properties to long-term rental, build public housing, government directly adding supply. Stop rents rising 10% plus per year while supply catches up. Martin North's analysis, without genuine supply solutions happening now, Melbourne's rental crisis will continue for at least another 3 to 5 years. So where does this lead? What happens to Melbourne renters from here? Best case scenario, the government actually delivers on housing targets, planning reforms pass, construction ramps up, Vacancy rates climb back to 3% plus by 2027. Rent growth slows to inflation levels, 3 to 4% per year instead of 10+%. The crisis eases, but this requires political will to reform planning laws. Billions in infrastructure investment. Private investor confidence returning, no more anti-landlord policies. Realistic scenario, construction slowly increases, but nowhere near 80,000 dwellings per year. We may be hit 15,000 to 20,000 new rentals by 2027. Vacancy stays below 2.5% for another 3 to 4 years. Rents keep rising 6 to 8% annually. By 2028, Melbourne's median rent could be $750 to $800 per week. Inner suburbs could hit $1,000 plus per week for a 2-bedroom unit. Worst case scenario. Construction doesn't recover. Immigration stays high. More landlords exit. Vacancy drops to 1% or lower. Rents rise 10 to 15% per year for the next 3 years. By 2028, you're looking at median rent, $850 per week. Inner suburbs, $1,100 plus per week for 2-bedroom. Mass exodus of young people from Melbourne to regional areas or other states. Homelessness surges. The social consequences? Families living in cars, multiple families sharing single houses, young professionals leaving Melbourne for Perth or Brisbane. The city's character fundamentally changes. Here's the truth about Melbourne's rental crisis. $650 per week median rent. 1.8% vacancy rate. Rents rising 2.7 times faster than wages. And in suburbs from Southbank to Cranbourne, renters are getting absolutely destroyed. This isn't media hype. This isn't an exaggeration. This is documented by SQM Research, Real Estate Institute of Victoria, and Real Estate Australia data. The numbers don't lie. While Premier Jacinta Allen announces plans to build 80,000 homes per year, a target industry experts say is impossible without massive reform, actual renters are choosing between paying rent and eating properly, between staying in Melbourne or leaving the city they love. Remember Amy, the nurse paying $650 per week for a 1-bedroom in Southbank? She's spending 58.6% of her take-home income on rent. She can't save. She can't plan for the future. She's trapped in a cycle where one emergency could make her homeless. This is Melbourne's rental reality in 2025. I'll be covering Melbourne's rental crisis every week, tracking rent increases by suburb, analysing government responses, and demanding accountability. Subscribe to Aussie Explained so you don't miss the next video where I'll be breaking down exactly which Melbourne suburbs offer the best value for renters right now. Thanks for reading. See you in the next one.